Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I am going to be talking about my ovulation cycle. Now, just to give you a little background, I did film a video about my ovulation and what I was doing differently. I actually did kind of a little week of ovulation test. So if you want to see that video, go ahead and click in the link down below. It should be there. And then I also did a video about how I tracked my ovulation incorrectly the first 4 months. So I pretty much went 4 months without even doing the deed on the right days or in the time windows I should have. So I will also link that video down below. Don't make the same mistake I did. Learn from my mistakes. It was a very frustrating time for me, but we got through it. So when I do mention cycle 5, I am strictly pertaining to us in the amount of time of us trying. So that means we are actively having unprotected sex to have a baby. But for the first 4 months, we weren't doing it on the correct days. This is actually our first month of actually trying on the correct days of my ovulation to heighten our chances of having a baby. So if that was a little confusing, I'm sorry, but I hope you get what I'm saying. So that way you can understand when I say cycle 5, or if I say first month of trying, you understand what I'm saying. I'm going to go over first the symptoms that I had during ovulation, because I know sometimes symptoms of ovulation can be very similar to period symptoms, and then also symptoms of ovulation can be confused with the 2-week wait symptoms, because sometimes people might ovulate a lot later than they thought they were going to ovulate, and some people might ovulate a lot earlier, so they think, oh wait, am I pregnant? But they're really not. So if you're really not tracking ovulation, this is really important, because you need to kind of understand the time frame and the differences. So first of all, ovulation, if you don't know, ovulation is the time window when your body, your lady parts, release the egg, so that way it could be fertilized by a male's sperm, or their swimmers. And they swim down your tubes, they go down to your uterus, and it implants, and then that's when the baby starts to form. So that's why ovulation is so important, because it's when the egg is released and you need the egg and the sperm so you can make a baby. The next thing you might hear me mention is cycle day. Cycle day is the length of time from the first day of your period to after your 2-week wait until your period starts again. So that's what those cycle days are. So cycle day 1 is the first day of your period, and then the end of your cycle would be the day before your period starts. So I mentioned high or low. That just means on the ovulation test spectrum, if it's a really faint line, then that's considered low, and if it's a really dark line or darker than the control test line, then that means it's a high or a peak. And also, if I say egg white cervical mucus, that I am pertaining to the discharge that you get. You can get it at any time of your cycle. It can be a stretchy consistency, it could be a very clear egg white look. Some people get darker, some people get yellow tinges. It just really depends on what your body's going through and what it's processing and discharging throughout. So if I say that, that's what I mean. I don't really care about saying the word, but some people do, so I just say egg white cervical mucus just to make sure everybody doesn't get freaked out, but it's not that big of a deal. So let's go ahead and get into the ovulation testing. Okay, so these are my ovulation testing dates, and that's where I have that cycle 5 up here is what I was mentioning, and saying that basically the cycle 5 is just meaning that this is the 5th month of us having unprotected sex. It doesn't mean that it was actually cycle 5 of me tracking my ovulation. So let's start with May 31st. This was the first day of my period, and if I might add, my period was really light. I thought that I had started my period, which I will be filming a video all about that and the symptoms and everything, because I really thought I was pregnant. I had the weirdest period. It was so light, and it only lasted really, I put light, but it really only lasted 2 days, and then it stopped. At one point I had a speck of blood, and that was pretty much it. So it was really interesting on why my body was doing that, but I could have swore that I was having implantation bleeding, and it happened to not be. But I did have a light period these 2 days. This was really not a light period. It was just streaks of blood here here and there. Then this is where the brown spotting came. Around cycle day 4 and 5 is when I started getting this brown tinge spotting, which was really weird for me, very abnormal. On June 5th was my cycle day 6. And on cycle day 6, I had egg white CM, cervical mucus, but nothing else was going on. I didn't really test any time during that time because I know it was like way too early. In cycle day 7, those were the days that I did not do any testing because it was just like way too early. Then we get into June 7th. June 7th is when I took my first ovulation test, and it was around 5:45 p.m. or 5:30. Can't really read my writing there, but it was sometime around 5:30, 5:45, and it was on cycle day 8, and I had a negative ovulation test. And I'm actually going to go ahead and show you guys what that test looked like. This is the ovulation test. It says cycle day 9 on here. Just missed that. It's not cycle day 9. This was cycle day 8. The first test I took, if you can tell kind of when I move it, you can kind of see the little line. It's definitely a negative. So this was the first test that I took. This was Equate test from Walmart. Very cheap. I did not really like the quality, but it got the job done because I did not have any other tests available right that moment. Going back to June 7th, when I got that negative ovulation test, that was at around 5:30, 5:45. We did end up doing the deed that day, but that is just because we are married, so we are most likely going to be having sex regardless if I'm in ovulation or not. That's just what happens. So I ended up doing I did not do another test that day. I ended up doing another test on June 8th, and this was at 2:09. It was cycle day 9, and I'll go ahead and show you guys that one. This is the cycle day 9 test. As you can see, the line is a lot darker in the sense of the control line. It's definitely faded, and I don't know if you can kind of see the other line there, but it's very, very, very faint. I wanted to take a moment to pause and let you know, anytime you see a very faint line on an ovulation test, unlike a pregnancy test, that means it's a positive, but with an ovulation test, it's a negative. It is not dark, like really, really dark, or as dark or darker than the control line, then it is a negative. So moving on to the second test. The second test for June 8th, which was at 6 p.m. I don't have that one. I actually threw that one away. But it was at 6 p.m. and it was a negative. Moving on to June 9th at 3:45 p.m. cycle day 10. I took 2 tests. I took one in the AM, or like, you know, mid-afternoon, and then one in the PM. And I'm trying to keep the same like trend of taking 2 tests a day just so I can catch my ovulation high and peak at the best times, because sometimes you can actually miss your window if you only test 1 time a day. So I wanted to make sure that I was being accurate. So at 3:45, as you can see, there is like literally nothing there. It's like you can't even see that line, like you can barely see it. And that was definitely a negative, and I put that inside my app, which I will show you guys a little later. And then I took another one, and that was at 11:26, and that one was really low as well. So these were both low. And I know you see like the big jump in time there. It was really early still, so I didn't really care that I took it like that, because I knew I wasn't really close to my ovulation window. I knew it was going to be sometime during cycle day 12 to 14, so I wasn't as worried about the first beginning days. And I was still trying to get used to these ovulation test strips that I had bought from Amazon. I stopped using these, and I just went ahead and purchased these strips, these cheapy test strips, and I was just trying to get used to, like, you know, how to use them. So on June 10th at 1:33, this was cycle day 11. This was another low, and I actually did not take another test that day just because it just wasn't necessary for me. June 11th, which was cycle day 12, at 1:45 p.m. I took a test, and as you can see, this line is getting a lot darker. It's not dark, but it's getting darker. But at 7:30 p.m. I took another one, and look how dark that one is. This one is like almost a distiller. So my app predicted this one as high, so we ended up doing the deed that day. June 12th was my predicted ovulation day, and that was on cycle day 13. And when I say the app predicted, it can only give like a good estimate. So that's why it's super important to do this. So look how dark these lines are. I mean, honestly, over time they do fade a little bit, but you can definitely see the lines for both times that I tested. This was actually my darkest line right here. So we ended up doing the deed on cycle day 13 at 7, I think it was like around 9, but we ended up doing the deed that day. But I had very high peaks on cycle day 12. So now I kind of know like around cycle day 12 is pretty much going to be the day that I ovulate. And then on June 13th, I still had a line, but this was considered low, so I just put that in as a low ovulation for AM and PM. I didn't even bother putting in the time anymore because it really doesn't matter. But yeah, we did the deed on these 2 days because we thought that was like the most important, and then I just kept testing like maybe 1 or 2 days after just to make sure it was going down. So then we get to June 15th. I actually skipped June 14th because like I said, it wasn't that big of a deal. I had already hit my ovulation peak. So on June 15th, I just did it just to test, and it was low. I assumed so, and that was in the morning. And then I did another one in the morning with first morning urine and June 16th, and that was a low, and I just put that in there. To get into the symptoms that I was feeling during my ovulation, this cycle versus like other cycles, this cycle had intense cramping. When I say intense cramping, I mean looking all over the internet to find out if anyone had experienced like cramping in like their butt. And when I say in their butt, like this is like so TMI, but like in the like anal part of your butt, like that part, like almost as if you had to use the bathroom like poop, but nothing would come out. Like that's what those cramps felt like. It felt like a constipation type of cramp, but not really. And it like shot up my back a little bit, and then it shot up to the front of like my uterus. It was the most painful thing. It felt like I like couldn't walk. It was like this really dull ache, and that also had really bad like just like side cramps. Like my side, it just felt like it was like on fire. Someone was like stabbing me with something. That's kind of what I could explain it like. It wasn't period cramps. I usually get my period cramps like throughout my leg, which is weird. It's like this dull achy pain, but for my ovulation cramps, it's like this really weird sharp pain I get on my left side most of the time, not really my right. So those were like the top main symptoms that I knew that I was like literally about to ovulate. And one time it had happened like the day or two before I actually ovulated. I started having ovulation pains. So I guess you can have them anywhere between that window of when your body's preparing. So just be aware. And then even on the day that my ovulation was supposed to finish, I felt like I felt myself conceive. Like it hurt so bad, and I was like, oh, I'm definitely dropping an egg right now. Like the conception is happening. All of my other cycles never had a pain like that, which was so weird because it makes me wonder, like, was I ovulating? Like I definitely know that like I was ovulating, but because of the pain being so intense and I wasn't really paying attention to them either, I started to wonder like, wow, was I ovulating before? In the sense of cravings and things like that, didn't really have that, but it was just like the pain on the sides and what really got me. I know some people say they like have like a high sex drive or they get really tired. For me, I didn't have a high sex drive. I just got really tired. Like I went to bed one time at like 6:30 during this ovulation cycle, and so I knew that something was different with my body that I had never like really paid attention to or experienced before. And so yeah, it was very interesting. I was editing this video and I definitely forgot to show you guys the app that I used for my ovulation. So the app was PregMom. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that. So the app was PregMom. It's right there, the purple one at the bottom, and like what it looks like. And it shows you like your peak days and your high day. Cycle day 13 was high, and I took 2 tests on cycle day 13. You can see, yeah, I took 2 tests cycle day 13 because the first one on 12 was low, and then you see how quick it jumped up. Like, that's like really crazy. So it jumped up really quick on the night of 12, and then on the 2 tests for 13 were high. So that's how the app tracks it. And all you do pretty much is you just go into your phone, you push this little arrow, and then you say take picture automatically. And I show you guys how to do that in my day-by-day ovulation testing tracking majig. If you want to check out like the day-by-day of my ovulation testing, I will also have that video down for you guys below. But this is just like the brief rundown of how I was feeling and just day-by-day testing. But like, yeah, and this was just like the ovulation tracking portion. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please, please, please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, if you thought it was helpful. It definitely helps my video reach more women, which I am really passionate about. If you've seen any of my other videos about birth controls and stuff, I just want to make sure that I'm putting my experience out there for someone to learn from. So if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. It helps my channel. Also, if you do like content like this and you like being here and talking to me or just connecting with me, you can go ahead and subscribe and join my little family. But I hope you guys are all having a swell day wherever you are in your part of the world, and I will see you guys in another video. Bye.